Okay, Iceman, now give him the quick deep freeze.
While NBC's Saturday morning lineup was already packed with some mind-blowing cartoons, Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends premiere in September 1981 took it to a whole new level. By blending the world of cartoons with sitcoms, this presented a unique take on our friendly neighborhood superhero as he found himself in a shared dormitory with Iceman and Fire-Star at Empire State University. Now, you can just imagine the kind of chaos this might have triggered as these superheroes kept their true identities a secret, juggled classes, and fought against the likes of Dracula and Doctor Doom in a sci-fi horror background. As these superhero teams came together, the show was such a hit that the 3-season run aired in reruns until 1986, and eventually ended with a low-key finale. Now, you'd think that such a hit deserved a grander farewell, but what stuck out was the last episode's simplicity, as it plays out as one last case file with no indication that this was the last time the Spider-Friends would come together. Today, I'll take you through this iconic show's history as we embark on a nostalgic ride as we go all the way from its concept to its end.
Try wading through this.
Context: The rise of the Spider-Friends. Created by Stan Lee and produced by Marvel Productions for NBC, this show was an attempt to replicate the success of the Super Friends franchise, which was Hanna-Barbera's idea to bring the Justice League to the Saturday morning network. Now, Marvel soon jumped on this opportunity to bring a similar concept to network TV, and this show also served as the perfect opportunity to introduce the Human Torch to the animated world. Unfortunately, legal issues led them to replace Human Torch with a brand new character, Fire-Star, whose character went through numerous changes, from being named Firefly, Starblaze, and Heatwave, before finally settling on Fire-Star. While the character's popularity resulted in her being introduced in the mainstream comic universe in the Uncanny X-Men, this show started her journey as a part of a superhero trio alongside Spider-Man and Iceman. With Stan Lee himself involved in the casting and animation, and even leading the narration as an in-universe host, Marvel maintained a high level of creative control over the concept and introduced several original characters, such as Hiawatha Smith, Videoman, and Lightwave, in addition to guest appearances by the X-Men and Avengers. Fire-Star actress Kathy Garver herself talked about how the storyboards were completed before any voice recording, and that they worked from the script and did a roundtable to get a feel of the show before they even began the recording process. While the first season consisted of 13 episodes that focused on standalone adventures, the second season had 3 episodes that shed light on all 3 characters' origins in episodes titled The Origin of Iceman, Along Came Spidey, and A Fire-Star is Born. After setting their stories straight, the third season once again delved right into their adventures and had 8 standalone episodes that ended with a finale, Mission Save the Guard Star, in 1983. However, this was far from the end, and the show's popularity soon resulted in reruns that went on all the way until 1986 as part of the syndicated Marvel Action Universe block. A big reason behind its success was its setting, which involved the superhero trio living with Aunt May and Miss Lion while hiding a secret high-tech Spider-Friends headquarters behind their Queens apartment walls. Even if this concept didn't make its way to the 90s or later Marvel releases, memories of the Spider-Friends living out a college life along with their superhero responsibilities remain etched in our memories. And as I dug deeper into this, I found myself overwhelmed with a sense of nostalgia for a time when the Marvel Action Universe block ruled over weekend mornings. The cracks form, scheduling, reruns, and content limits. Even before the Marvel Action Universe block was a thing, the show had already begun to gain popularity among fans, and Marvel did a wonderful thing by producing it in 3 controlled bursts. With a debut season focusing on their adventures, and then a buffer season that delved into the characters' storylines before jumping right back into their adventures again, the entire 24-episode package had a good initial run. Over time, NBC started tweaking its branding and even paired it alongside the animated Incredible Hulk series as a part of the Marvel Action Universe block, and these continuous improvements and changes are probably what resulted in the show's overall success. It never suffered any public scandals or rating clashes that resulted in any chaotic shutdowns, and had a rather successful run as Marvel delivered the content and NBC repeated it until 1986, even after Marvel had moved on to other projects. Admittedly, the show did have some explicit content that had to be edited out in later reruns and releases, and the first season's 13th episode, The Quest of the Red Skull, infamously landed in a controversy. As it followed the Red Skull's attempts to kidnap the Spider-Friends to ensure that they don't intervene with his plans to start World War III, this episode had explicit references to Nazi imagery, swastikas, phrases such as Heil Hitler, and Nazi salutes, which resulted in it being entirely omitted or heavily edited in later broadcast packages. Now, kids who only ever saw the reruns were shielded from the show's darker stories, and many streaming platforms also made sure to skip it altogether. The penultimate blow. The X-Men adventure. As we talk about specific episodes of the show, it would be a grave mistake to skip mentioning the last couple of episodes that marked its end. Well, the third season's 7th episode, The X-Men Adventure, was a mega crossover climax right before the actual finale and sucked Spider-Friends deep into the world of the X-Men. With Michael Reeves writing the script, Stan Lee opening the narration by talking about the X-Men and mutant allies, and Don Jurwich directing the episode, it was nothing short of a marvel, pun intended, as it used Fire-Star's past as the emotional core that the story was built around. In fact, some would even say that this was more of a Fire-Star episode and less about Spider-Man, and the story followed the trio as they visited the X-Mansion and allied with Storm, Sprite, Nightcrawler, Cyclops, Colossus, and Professor X to defeat Cyberiad. Now, Cyberiad himself had a past with Angelica, who was now Fire-Star, and he had blamed her for his fate as he fell victim to a lab accident and was subjected to horrible injuries. In no time, he turned his destiny around and turned into a cybernetic villain determined to use his tech knowledge to trap the X-Men and destroy their base. Even though the episode is quite literally titled The X-Men Adventures, it does focus on Fire-Star as her old college flame turns up as a half-robot to exact revenge, only at the wrong time. With her being surrounded by a bunch of superheroes as Marvel filled the episode with their full X-Men roster, Cyberiad even declares that she abandoned him as he expresses his resentment. But unfortunately for him, his plans don't work out. Now, even if the episode doesn't introduce the X-Men ensemble, their lack of personality is striking as they pretty much hang around as background props and barely have any dialogue. They do all get an opportunity to showcase their powers, but again, this subtlety only sets the foundation for a finale that is far more intimate and less guest-heavy. Looking back, this episode comes across as the last big ensemble performance before the curtain falls. Speaking of which, let's move on to the final episode. The final episode, Mission: Save the Guard Star. Finally, the last episode, Mission: Save the Guard Star, first aired on November 4th, 1983. Even though this is disputed, and some sources have it marked as November 5th. Just like most episodes of the show, Dennis Marks wrote the idea while Don Jurwich executed it from the director's seat. And the story was finale-worthy as the Spider-Friends come together to save the world. The story also has some high stakes for Iceman, whose younger half-sister, S.H.I.E.L.D. agent Lightwave, goes rogue and ends up sabotaging the Guard Star satellite. With her ability to manipulate and take the form of light, she comes across a huge threat, but the more they look into it, the more they realize that she had been taken under rogue S.H.I.E.L.D. agent Buzz Mason's mind control. In fact, Mason intended to use a quantum intensifier to enhance Lightwave's capabilities, seize the Guard Star, and eventually seize control over global weapons systems. Under his influence, an innocent Lightwave fights the Spider Friends and nearly causes a disaster, as her powers end up harming Iceman and leave him drifting towards his death in space. These events make more sense when you recall Stan Lee's narration that describes this as their last mission in space. But thankfully, Spider-Man and Fire-Star manage to break through to her real self and free her from Mason's mind control. As they neutralize the weapons threat and end up saving the Guard Star, this episode could have been just another episode in the show, as the heroes return to life as usual without any grand farewell speeches, epilogues, or plans for their future selves. The uncomfortable truth, a finale that doesn't feel like one. Now, if you think that the episode didn't play out like a grand conclusion, you might not be the only one. In fact, many fans were of the view that the finale didn't really feel like one, and that even though the show has a definitive last episode from a production perspective, it doesn't land as a climax to a 3-season-long show. I mean, there are no villains who are permanently defeated, no true identities revealed, and to top it all off, the show also wrapped up with many open threads, such as Lightwave's future with S.H.I.E.L.D., potential X-Men or Avengers crossovers, or the Spider-Friends' fate after college, which surprisingly is a secret that remains intact. While some might say that the end was half intentional and half accidental, the manner in which the series ended its 24-episode run and dissolved into reruns didn't give much closure, making it just another Saturday morning adventure instead of a grand finale. The Morlun retcon, 2 different endings. While the cartoon ended with all 3 heroes alive and well, it wrapped up with their success with the Guard Star mission and eventual decision to return to their quiet, normal lives. However, after the cartoon ended, Marvel decided to revisit this universe decades later in the Spider-Verse comics, and this is how it played out. While the television show had ended with the heroes surviving the worst of their battles, the Amazing Spider-Man comics' 3rd volume's 7th issue added on to their storylines by declaring that Morlun had been hunting them down. While discussions over the comic's continuity eventually confirm that it takes place in the Spider-Friends world, the comic follows Morlun as he hunts and eventually kills this universe's Spider-Man, Iceman, and Fire-Star, and virtually eradicating all the superhuman forces that fought back against the tyranny. Of course, this tragic, dark multiverse epilogue is only restricted to the comics, and is essentially layered onto a universe that was never created to cater to such demands. While the children's cartoon never portrayed such an ending or even remotely hinted at such grim deaths for our dear superheroes, the Morlun sequence in the comics made for a chilling end for these characters. It was rather shocking to see Marvel wreck their lives with a single comic, and Morlun, the Inheritor, was the perfect character to enact this tragedy. With his history as an inheritor who feeds on spider totems as a means of survival, Morlun finds Spider-Man to be a particularly delectable meal as he sucks the life force out of him and even describes it as a child's confection before moving on to targeting the other heroes. With such a brutal ending for these characters, Marvel truly wrecked our hearts by ending their lives in the flash of a light, and especially robbed us of their last moments as they tried to take a stand against Morlun. Instead, their deaths were quick, unpredictable, and shockingly easy, which is either a testament to Morlun's strength or a criticism of the writer's lack of effort in writing these characters out of the comics. Either way, I'd personally love to live in the delusion that this never happened, and that these characters who graced my Saturday mornings are still out there peacefully existing in an alternative cartoon universe. Behind the scenes, the cast and Marvel Productions trajectory. Coming back to the show, the cast remained consistent across seasons, with Dan Gilvezan voicing Spider-Man and Kathy Garver voicing Fire-Star, as well as Angelica Jones and characters such as Storm. Similarly, Frank Welker also wore multiple hats and voiced not just Iceman, but also Miss Lion and many other supporting roles, while June Foray brought characters such as Aunt May and the crime computer to life. The show also had a rotating ensemble, including Michael Rye, who voiced Magneto, Peter Cullen, who voiced the Hulk, as well as villains such as Mysterio and Red Skull, and William Marshall, who depicted Juggernaut and Tony Stark. Along the same lines, Stanley Jones voiced a range of characters from Professor X and Cyclops to Dracula, Nightcrawler, and Dean Wilmer. And even if the voice cast consisted of several actors, these few names stuck with the show until its end and played these parts to utter perfection. When it came to writing and directing, Dennis Marks produced and even wrote some of the episodes, while Michael Reeves wrote some spectacular episodes, including the final two. Similarly, Don Jurwich directed a large number of episodes, and his vision, paired with Stan Lee's narration bolted onto later seasons and then retrofitted for reruns, gave the series a framing device. No other cartoon was doing it like this at the time, and with Marvel's creator himself personally introducing each adventure, kids were immediately drawn to the show. Even after the show ended, Marvel Productions continued to feed into the ecosystem and produced the 90s X-Men and Spider-Man animated series. And as I look at the big picture, I can't help but think of Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends as the bright, campy prototype that inspired Marvel to plan for other team-ups on TV. It expanded the possibilities for crossovers in not just apocalyptic situations, but rather in standout missions that gave these characters shared screen time and only strengthened the concept of the Marvel multiverse. What came next? While Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends continued to live on reruns and VHS and DVD before finally being available for streaming, it does serve as a time capsule into what early 80s Marvel animation looked like. As for the characters, the show set the base for many of their future stories, and Fire-Star especially benefited from debuting in such a standout show. Her character went on to be a part of comics canon, where she became a new warrior and eventually even earned a reputation as an Avenger. Marvel also continued to place the Amazing Friends phrase across comics and eventually licensed it as a deliberate reference, especially with many linked releases, such as an anniversary comic that was released in 2006. This comic began with a brand new story, Opposites Attack, that was filled with inside jokes from the show, and this was soon followed by a mini Marvel tale, Spider-Man and His Amazing Co-Workers. Finally, the Ultimate Spider-Man's 118th issue was inspired by the show's premise, as Peter Parker navigates life in the classroom once again alongside Fantastic Four's Johnny Storm, thereby echoing the school-based branding and setting in a modern world. In 2021, Disney and Marvel took this further and repurposed the brand for an entire new generation of kids, releasing Spidey and His Amazing Friends to introduce heroism and teamwork to kids. This show served as a preschool-focused series that aired on Disney Junior and reintroduced the concept of Spider-Man operating with a heroic team. And while it's not a direct continuation of Earth 8107's Spider-Friends, it does echo the same idea. This only goes to show just how durable the entire Spider-Friends era had been, and even if it's been revamped and rebranded, it comes across as a fresh, exciting spin on the friendly neighborhood heroes' adventures. Admittedly, fans who grew up with the original might find the contrast to be sharp, but as the OG trio slipped into a quiet life with only reruns bringing them back to the screen, some crumbs of their stories were much needed, even if they were in the form of show titles that echoed the same branding. Especially in the Spider-Verse comic, where Morlun shockingly killed them off, it's heartwarming to see that their legacy lives on through inspired cartoons and comic series. But anyway, that's all from me. Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends had lived a rather adventure-filled life with multiple superhero crossovers, villain obstacles, and a simple show finale, and eventual tragic deaths in comics. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on it all in the comments below.